welcome back to the Claremont Classic Garage. Today we're going to do some more work on our 1948 Ford 8N here. We're going to be installing the hydraulic pump, the lift cover, and all the stuff on the back. So let's get started. The dog stayed in the house today, but at least I got Stuart here to keep me company. And it's a nice day to be in the warm Claremont Classic Garage because we've got like an ice storm raging outside. You can hear it bouncing off the door here. Pretty strong wind too. It's just a nasty day. I'm not even going to make the Kubota wait outside while I work like I usually do. It's time to put the hydraulic pump up into the belly of the tractor. Our replacement gasket here is somewhat thinner than the original gasket, so we're going to go ahead and just put a small bead of silicone around here to make sure this thing seals, because we don't want the belly of it weeping oil. While we're under there, we'll also install the plugs in the transmission and the differential. The pump goes up rather simply. I use my little transmission jack here. All you have to do is the linkage here has to get up over the flange in the casting, and then the pump will go right in. Okay, there we go. It does take quite a bit of jiggling and wiggling, but once you get it there, you can get a punch to line it up perfectly, and then start putting in a couple of bolts. The end bolts here go into blind holes, so you can just screw them in. The ones on the side, they are not blind holes. They go right into the sump, so I usually put just a little dab of silicone on them to help them seal up. When I torque the pump, I do these two first, because they are on either side of the port that feeds the pressurized oil up to the lift cylinder. There we are. And then once I'm done there, I continue with the normal crisscross pattern. And last, I double check the torque on those two. And we're good to go. Now we can change the PTO seal and install the PTO shaft. It's pretty easy. In the back there's a circlip that holds the bearing into the housing. We just pop that out with a screwdriver, and then we can knock the whole works out of the housing. And you can see here, this little clip just comes right out. Then you just grab a brass drift or something and there we are. We can clean up the shaft. We can check our bearing. It's nice and quiet and smooth, so it's okay. Now is also a good time. We're gonna polish up where the seal runs here, and if you find that the old seal has left a groove, you just drive the new seal into a little different place. This wear sleeve can be replaced if you want. I'm pretty sure it can. Yeah, it's definitely a separate piece, so you could probably buy this at the places that sell tractor parts, but ours is fine, so we'll just polish it up with a piece of emery and it'll be good to go again. Still coming down. Look at the ice stuck to that window. boy, oh boy. Well, you know what they say about March? In like a lion, out like a lamb. Well, today's a lion day. It's like the 22nd. We're getting near April. The first swap meet of the year is supposed to be this Sunday, so on the 27th. So hopefully it'll perk up by then. We're just going to use an appropriately sized socket. I push the old seal out. There you go. That's the original seal. It's a leather seal. It was in there for a long time. It did its job, but we're going to replace it with the new style seal. This is a double lip seal, so there could be some confusion as to which way it goes. But if you look closely, this side under there, you can just barely see it. It's got the tension spring, so that is the oil side. This side is just kind of a molded lip. That is the dust seal. So it's going to go in this way. Before we put it in, we'll pack the back of it with grease. And I've got a little bit bigger socket to use, and we'll go over to the press and push it in. And it pushes down till it lands on that snap ring that's in there. Then we're just going to drop the retainer right back over it. And it can be a little tricky. It's got to go right straight down, and you kind of twist it as you go to make sure that seal doesn't get flipped over on itself. It's a pretty tight fit. So you just watch down the shaft there, and I see one little spot where it's coming up. There we are. We just kind of help it over the edge of the shaft. Well, I sure screwed that up. This thing here just doesn't have enough of a chamfer on it. This has got quite an aggressive lip on it, and I wrecked the lip. So I don't have another one. So what we're going to do for now, I just stuck the original seal back in, and we'll put it on. And if it leaks, it's pretty easy to change without losing any oil. You just drive the front of the tractor down into a ditch and pull the PTO shaft out, and we'll come up with another plan then. But fingers crossed, this will be okay and won't leak. There, it's back on. I mean, you can feel some drag on the seal, so hopefully it'll be okay. If not, like I said, we'll change it later. Now you just have to pop our little clip back in, and we'll be good to go. There we are. I'll put a new gasket on and a little silicone. Okie dokie, in she goes. And we just feed her into the hydraulic pump there. Just give it a little turn to get the splines lined up. And then in it goes. And while we're at it, we'll install the anchors for the check chains. Just because we're here already anyway. And little holes go up. And we'll torque them all to 60 foot-pounds. And the last little touch, PTO cap. Very important on these Fords because, of course, anytime you want to use the hydraulic lift, you have to have the PTO running. So this thing is always here just whirring away, right? So let's keep it covered up if we're not using it. Now we can put the side covers on. The one on this side incorporates the PTO shifter. You can see there, there we are. That's where the PTO shifter is put on and off. So we're gonna make sure that this thing engages with that, and then we'll install the cover. What I've done with the gasket on this is I've used a little silicone to glue the gasket to the back of the shifter and put grease on this side. So if you need to take it off to look in there, sometimes when you're servicing it, you like to take these covers off and clean. It just makes it easier. That way the gasket stays with the cover, but it won't stick to the transmission. And when you put this on, you need a little bit longer bolts here and here because of the pawl for the parking brake and the hanger for the running board, and that's the same on either side. And there we are, everything torqued to 60 foot-pounds. Last thing we'll do is make sure the PTO shifts. And it does, perfectly. We're going to leave this side cover off now because we're going to lower the lift cover down, and we need to engage the operating rod into the rocker. Now I'm going to put the lift cover on. When I put the lift cover on, I leave the gasket silicone free. I just paint the deck with grease. That allows this thing to be removed easily if we ever have to remove it, and you will find that the lift cover is one of those things you find yourself removing occasionally. And your gasket won't stick, and a lot of times you can actually reuse it. I just lower it down with the crane. Nice and easy. I'm not quite to the stage yet where I have to worry about the control rod, but we're getting there. I forgot to mention I've got it lowering down over a pair of guide studs. And you can see we've got everything set perfectly with no intervention at all. As it goes down, the control rod is going to drop right into the eye of the rocker. Okay, there you can see the knob, or the little ball on the end of the control rod, is in the socket on the rocker, so that's good. I've gone around and run all these bolts down. Now we're going to torque everything to 60, including these nuts that hold the lift cylinder to the underside of the cover. Now it's time to get some gear lube in this thing. The transmission, the hydraulic system, and the differential all are joined internally. It's a common sum. So, nugget, really? Normally, on the corner of the transmission cover, there's a little hole that you can pour the fluid in with a funnel, but we've got the lid off the transmission, so we're going to pour it in here. So, it takes pretty much all of a 5-gallon or 20-liter pail. 80W90. I know the debate has raged on and on about GL5 oil in older things that have brass in them and blah, blah, blah. I don't really buy that. I've used GL5 in lots of old tractors and never had a problem. There's not really anything in here that is under that kind of shear load like a synchronizer. The old GL5 was hard on brass synchronizers. All that's really brass in here is those couple of bushings and stuff in the hydraulic pump, and they don't have those kind of shear loads on them that the GL5 could really harm. And I did some other research, and it seems that in recent times the additive package in GL5 has changed a little bit, so it's not really as harsh as it got the reputation of being anymore. Anyway, so what we're going to do is, there is a dipstick in this side cover, but the usual consensus is to just fill it up until it kind of is at the level of this hole, and you're good to go. But in order to do that, we pour it in the transmission, and you have to give it a few minutes to kind of percolate through everywhere. So it's a bit of a procedure. You can run the fluid a little higher. I mean, basically why guys like to run it low like that is because of the propensity of it to get by the seals and get into the brakes. So if it's down here, it can't really, you know, it's kind of below the level of the axles. Whatever, everybody's got their own idea. We're going to start by filling it up to there and see how much oil we use. I can see it's just about right up to here now, and I've got probably about that much left in the bucket, which will bring it the rest of the way up to where it, you know, needs to be, kind of around here. And I'm curious to see how that equates to the dipstick. But anyway, what I'm going to do to avoid a mess when it gets up to that hole, I'm going to go ahead now and put the side cover on. Well, the fun never ends. This tractor was missing the running boards when I got it. And I had a set of brackets, and my friend Nick says he thinks he has a pair of running boards to donate to this. But anyway, I put the brackets on. Turns out this one's from a Jubilee. All we got to do, though, to make it work is just drill a new hole in it, and it'll work just fine on the 8N. And I may have to just take a little wisp out of it there. No worries. All I had to do was drill one hole and put a little relief in the back of it for this little dome. And the Jubilee running board bracket is now an 8N running board bracket. And I had to drill a new pair of mounting holes for the actual plate back there. What are you going to do? This thing isn't going to the Smithsonian. It's going to move trailers. Now we're going to see where our oil level actually is at according to the stick. See, it's just at the low. So, quite frankly, I'm guessing that when they tell you fill it to there, that's probably pretty much where the full mark on the stick is. So we're going to dump the rest of this bucket in here and let it settle and see where it ends up. So let's see where we ended up. And you can see there, it's right almost up to the full mark on the dipstick. So I'd say that is a-okay. So from now on, I'm not worrying about filling it to lower holes or nothing. I'm just going to dump one of those full buckets in. Anyway, now we can close this thing up. So we're going to, very important, this spring. That goes down in there, and squirt a little oil in there first. That's for the detent ball. That's for the detent ball for our shifter. That's what makes it click nicely. Now I'm just going to put grease on this because sometimes these things get hung up in between gears, and you have to reach in and manipulate the shift forks to get it back in neutral so you can carry on. Certainly more common on Ferguson's than Fords, but I believe it can happen to Fords too, although it's never happened to me. There we go. And we can put on our gasket. It only goes one way, which is that way. And we'll grease up the top side of it. Now on the Ferguson, you don't take the whole cover off. You just, there's two nuts that hold the actual shifter on. And you always on a Ferguson, you either leave those two nuts loose, or you keep an 11/16 wrench in the toolbox so you can pop the shifter out, and you always have a big screwdriver with you so you can get the thing back into neutral. It used to happen to me if I was bush hogging, if I'd hit something and it'd send a shock up the drive line. Anyway, enough of Ferguson's, we're working on a Ford. Now, this is our transmission cover. So the starter button is there, and it's attached to the interlock, which is exactly the same as the neutral safety on your car. It will only allow the starter to be engaged if the thing is in neutral. The very first 9Ns didn't have that. They just had a starter button on the dash, and you could start them in any gear. Yikes. Anyway, so this just goes on. You just make sure that goes down in there like that. And that's all there is to it. That's all bolted down. Now for the moment of truth, we'll see if it works. So there's reverse, fourth, second, first, third. Perfect. Now we'll put the boot on. The funnest part of any 8N job. Depending what kind of boot you get, they can be a real beast to put on, or they can go on easily. This one, just kind of, I put it on and just sort of twisted it. The other ones, they're so tight around the bottom here, I actually had to make a special pair of jaws for my snap ring pliers to put it on, but this one seemed to just go on by itself. So, and now we'll make sure it's in neutral. The starter button works. If it's in gear, it does not. Good. Well, golly, that looks pretty good. Lift cover all painted. Now we can start getting a 3-point linkage installed. I've got the lift arms installed. And now I'm using our special little clevis pin here and a big punch, and we're knocking this sleeve pin through to get our rocker installed. We got our last little bits on. The lift yoke, I guess you could call that. The level box, the check chains, top link that I had kicking around. And I got the quadrant all back together with a stopper installed. So that is the hydraulic system and the 3-point linkage all back together and ready for work. Well, it was a long day. I didn't stay out here all day. I went in most of the afternoon. I was in the house. I had a few things I had to do in there. I just came back out here after dinner to get all this stuff finished up. The storm that was going this morning is still going. It's warmed up a tiny little bit. So the freezing rain watch we had this morning turned into a freezing rain warning. That went till around noon, and that dropped, and now we are under a rainfall warning. We're supposed to get all kinds of rain overnight, and because the frost isn't really out of the ground yet, there's not a lot of places for it to go, and there are flood warnings in place for low-lying areas. Hopefully everybody's okay. Anyway, that'll do it for this one. In the next video, we're going to tackle the front axle and all the steering and get that all together. We've got to go through the steering box, and we'll get the front wheels back on it, get it on the ground, and I'll show you how to set the alignment. Anyway, until then, I'm glad you were able to tune in. I'd appreciate it if you tune in again. It makes me happy that I can show you guys what I'm doing. Anyway, until we meet again, thanks for tuning in. And this is Kevin checking out from the Claremont Classic Garage. So long for now.